of the year.
It's 7 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Aidan Delaney. No aid has been distributed in Gaza yet since the arrival of supplies yesterday. There's been international criticism of Israel's decision to allow limited aid into the enclave. 5 trucks were allowed yesterday, while permission has been granted for around 100 today. However, the UN Secretary-General spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric, says the process to get aid to those who need it is complicated.
Today, one of our teams waited several hours for the Israeli green light to access the Kerem Shalom area and collect the nutrition supplies. Unfortunately, they were not able to bring those supplies into our warehouse. So just to make it clear, while more supplies have come in to the Gaza Strip, we have not been able to secure the arrival of those supplies into our warehouses and delivery points.
Meanwhile, the EU is to review aspects of its trade and cooperation deal with Israel over the continued attacks on Gaza and the limited supply of aid. The bloc's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, says saving lives is their top priority.
It is clear from today's discussion that there is a strong majority in favour of review of Article 2 of our association agreement with Israel. So we will launch this exercise, and in the meantime it is up to Israel to unblock the humanitarian aid. Saving lives must be our top priority.
The EU and UK have placed fresh sanctions on Russia's military, energy and finance sectors. Weapon supply chains have also been targeted. Moscow's so-called shadow fleet has been hit with new measures. There's been criticism of Vladimir Putin's refusal to put a timeline on peace talks with Ukraine. A new report suggests more supervised drug injection facilities could reduce homeless deaths. 128 people died while homeless in 2021, with drug poisoning responsible for almost half of the cases, while almost 9 in 10 had a history of problem substance abuse, according to the latest figures from the Health Research Board. And Bohemians has launched a new report looking at the positive impact the football club has had on the local community. The organisation runs a number of accessibility and youth initiatives, as well as community climate education programmes. The club has also run street leagues for primary school children. Lee Grace is community coordinator with Bohs and took part in the Community Federation Cup alongside local Gardaí when he was younger.
So it's local teams from Dublin 7 mix in with the Gardaí. You train for 6 weeks together and then you play in Dalymount. There's a competition, the Garda and the teams are mixed together. And again, football puts respect on people's names, so as much as people might have a bad narrative towards the police or anything, if you see a police officer who's a good footballer, you have a bit of respect on his name, you're saying, oh, I want him on my team and we're going to play him, we're going to be happy together. And it also means then you see this person on the street and you have a smile, there's no negative memory attached to them.
And that's your news for now.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Pit stop at Formula One this summer with Ryanair's low-fare flights to Barcelona, Luton or Cologne.
Heavy showers will continue tonight, becoming largely dry by morning with clear spells developing, though mist and fog patches will develop in parts. Light variable breezes and lowest temperatures of 4 to 9 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With UPMC Orthopaedic Care. When things don't move, rotate or bend like they used to, choose us to help you get back in action.
This is News Talk.
Good evening, you're welcome along to Tuesday night's Off the Ball. We're with you on News Talk here till 10 o'clock this evening, and tonight the football show is going to be a preview of tomorrow night's Europa League final in Bilbao. It is of course Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur. We're going to be joined by Martin Lipton in the Spurs corner and Andy Mitten in the United corner from 9 p.m. Our 8 to 9 hour tonight then is the penultimate episode of our documentary series, which has been airing every Tuesday night here on Off the Ball. It's called Diverted. Florida is the destination. Highlight and college football amongst the stories there. And in around 20 minutes time we're going to get Colin Boyle live up on the line to get his thoughts on round 1 of the All-Ireland Football Championship. He just needed an extra 24 hours to compose himself after Mayo's shock defeat at the hands of Cavan on Sunday afternoon. If you want to get in touch, our number is 0879 180 180. If you have any questions for our contributors, any comments whatsoever, we'd be happy to get to them between now and 10 p.m. Cameron Hill is delivering the Newsround. Cameron, how are you doing?
Hello.
Mick McCarthy is here as well. How are you, Mick?
Good.
We were already unbelievably excited for tomorrow night, weren't we? This Tottenham Hotspur versus Manchester United head-to-head in the Europa League final. No?
I am, I suppose, yeah. I feel like, you know, two underachieving teams finding a backdoor into the Champions League. and some sort of salvation for a terrible season isn't exactly what I would consider the glory of football. But, you know,
What would you prefer?
be it.
Eintracht Frankfurt versus Bayer
Oh,
Leverkusen?
no, don't get me wrong, I'll watch the game with more enjoyment than I usually would.
Okay, so even if you were not excited about the prospect of this
No, I
fixture
am,
whatsoever tomorrow evening,
I'm just moaning about those two clubs.
you might start to get a little bit of excitement when Ange Postecoglou comes out swinging today in the press conference. Cameron, you're going to be playing this in your news round a little bit later on, but he was accused of being a clown in an Evening Standard. Sorry, he was accused of possibly becoming a clown by Dan Kilpatrick in the Evening Standard. And somebody at Tottenham Hotspur, maybe Ange himself, is reading everything. And he caught wind of the fact that he's straddling this fine line between hero and clown. I didn't know there was such a fine line between these two such things, but apparently Ange Postecoglou has brought these two things together. And he hit back in the press conference earlier on about him potentially being a clown. And that's just ratcheted it up nicely. The fact that this could be his last ever pre-match European press conference in a Tottenham Hotspur dugout, and he's defending himself from ever being associated with clownship.
He didn't have to read too far into the piece. It's literally the headline.
That's the thing, but it is in the piece as well, crucially.
It is in the piece as
Crucially, I
well.
did check.
He wasn't thrown under the bus.
No, by a headline editor.
No.
And yet, was he being called a clown? Was it in the context of the conversation? You win and you're a hero, you lose and you're going to go down in history as a failed manager. And you write words when you're writing articles. It's not necessary. He wasn't calling him a clown or saying that he even would be a clown. He was kind of talking about how he would be perceived in some ways. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and that's usually the case. Do you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is when usually managers, let's face it, take umbrage from Alex Ferguson was great at it. Alex Ferguson was as great as, you're the worst of them all, you know what I mean? And start having a go at something that somebody said. Bullying people into, supporting him, in the newspaper, as it was probably more often back then. And usually would take them somewhat out of context. But I think it's just a sporting thing that people use these things, don't they? It's like, I don't think Ange wants to know what Dan Kilpatrick really meant. He just sees that and thinks, defensiveness, this helps me. This gets my back up and gets my passion going.
Clown is a hard part of that binary, though.
You're
either a hero or like an idiot is basically that's kind of the point. It's like how dare you dare to dream is kind of this, like, I can understand why he's annoyed. Like I take Ange's side here because clown is highly charged.
I'm the only one who doesn't. I think you do.
I think so. I don't think there's any world in which Ange Postecoglou and his Tottenham team lose tomorrow evening, and you come to the conclusion after he inevitably gets sacked that he is a clown.
Yeah,
like he's naive maybe in terms of his football. If you want to look at it like that, I
suppose we're just thinking about the word too literally.
No, no, we're not. It's the furthest extent of ridicule.
I don't think that he's like a clown. I think it means more that he will be remembered as a
figure of fun,
because of his failure. So he was like he's brought Tottenham to depths that people wouldn't have foreseen, and he's done it with a kind of sort of a cantankerous, spiky nature in press conferences, and with a style of play that he absolutely refuses to back down from. And I think there is an element of like, is that not just a word we use? He's a clown. Yeah. It doesn't mean he's a figure of fun or anything like that. It just means it's like, he wasn't a good manager. He wasn't a serious manager.
Well,
and I'm not even to say that he is. I'm saying that in the context of using that word, I think it's okay. I really do.
Using that term brings all the other baggage that term implies. Like, you could call him Don Quixote because he's been trying to push like £50 worth of pretty average player up a mountain all year.
Stop with the pretty average player. There's a fortune spent on that squad. No, you can't tell me now. You can't come in here, regardless of whether you want to argue with the word clown or not. You can't tell me that he hasn't massively underachieved. Take injuries out of it. It's only North London teams that have injuries. We know that. Everybody else is fine. But, take injuries out of it and take the fact, like, I don't know, like bad luck or whatever it might be. That team is massively underachieving. Watch them on Friday night. They were pathetic. They were so bad. They gave up. They did not have it in them. And that all comes from a manager. That all comes from what you're doing with those players.
There was an inevitability about that on Friday.
Of course. The last few weeks, fine. The Europa League final is the only thing that matters.
The high, like, I mean, you said there, like, on the clown point about, you know, a man or a manager who's not taken too seriously. And there is that Logan Roy thing about you are not serious people that kind of comes to mind with both of these clubs. And I think that maybe is at the heart of what's being suggested here. Like, I do think Tottenham have underachieved. I think Manchester United have underachieved to a greater extent this season in terms of their league position versus their wages that they're paying their players. And I think that is a conclusion that a lot of people would reach when they look at both of these teams right now. Neither of you are to be taken seriously is what people would say about these two teams at the moment. And maybe that's what the conclusion on Ange's performance is, when if you argue that a team is a representation of a manager and a team is not to be taken seriously, then can you take the manager seriously?
And is he a clown?
Maybe that's
I actually
the logic behind that is.
Yeah, I'm defending the words of it. I would not. I don't think it's fair to use that word for somebody doing his job, and you know I do actually agree with that. And actually, I like Ange.
Yeah,
does that make sense? I don't think he's doing a good job. And I don't think he was ever I don't think he had done enough in football for a job as big as Spurs. And I know Celtic fans will get angry listening to that, but everybody wins the league at Celtic. Do you know what I mean? It's set up for you. And you can impose your will on a league that is inferior. And I don't think he had done enough to get a big job in England with such high expectations. And I think that's played out, and maybe he comes back from it, and maybe he doesn't. You know, but my point originally was,
City?
I like him.
What if he managed Manchester City? If he managed the best team in the league,
yeah, which I don't know, but he would never have got that job because Manchester City would.
I'm not sure it's necessarily a case of describing the Scottish Premiership as not on the same standard as the Premier League. I think it's describing Tottenham Hotspur as not the same as Celtic in.
No, of course not. No, sorry.
But if they were the dominant team,
when I'm
in
saying that Scotland is inferior, what I mean is in opposition to Celtic. Celtic have their best team in the league.
Yeah,
they are. So you can play that high intensity style of football. That he can bend everybody else to his will because they've got the best team.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that when you're one of many good teams.
And I think that's probably a style point as opposed to a wealth of experience point that has actually cost him, I think, where, you know, he has to be the dominant force in a league in order to play in this way, in order to play in the Ange style and to be risk-free and maybe not clownish, but let's pick another circus act, acrobatic in how they take risks and actually expose themselves.
I didn't mean, though, that he wasn't experienced enough. What I'm saying was he wasn't proven enough. You needed to see him do it at a higher level, and not necessarily higher level. Don't get angry if you're a Celtic fan, because that is an achievement in itself. But at I suppose a more comparable level, like a lower level in England, maybe, to see if he was able to transfer that on to a team like Spurs. So look, I think that's failed. But actually, if you listen to that press conference, be it that answer, which we'll hear in a few minutes, or the one after where he's asked about his future, and again, takes up the question wrong. It's not about that, but starts talking about his, you know, jobs come and go. I'm happy in my life, my family, and I'll go on and I'll get another job. Everybody changes jobs. Don't worry about that. I'm fine. You know, he just has an attitude that I do quite like. He's under a lot of pressure constantly at the moment, so he's been more prickly than he usually would be, which I think makes him come across maybe as more kind of cantankerous and a little bit sort of moany than he might be. But you see him in another circumstance. I didn't think he was like that at Celtic. I thought at Celtic, when things were really going very, very well, he had the same kind of attitude, but in a more likeable way. So you have to take account for the pressure that he's under, I suppose, is my point.
Maybe at the start of last season as well, there was when Tottenham were in the upper echelons of the table. The news round is with UPMC Orthopaedic Care. When things don't move, rotate or bend like they used to, choose us to help you get back in action. Cameron, where are we starting this evening?
Well, we'll get to that Ange clip in a second, but we'll start with Republic of Ireland, because Louise Quinn has been named in the squad for their upcoming Women's Nations League games against Turkey and Slovenia. That's despite the centre-back announcing her retirement earlier this month. Manager Carla Ward explained the decision and what role the experienced Quinn will have in the camp.
what Lou can help us with is not just about on the pitch, it's off the pitch. You know, we're doing a lot of work, as I've mentioned in quite a few press conferences, around how do we develop these next young leaders, how do we bring that out of them, and Lou's going to play a big part in that. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with her even this last week around how she can help with that, how she can guide, and how she can kind of nurture some of those younger players. So Lou's job in this next camp is far bigger than being just a footballer.
Ward has also called up the US-born Erin Healy. She qualifies through her Monaghan-born grandfather, the striker currently playing in Australia with Adelaide United. Captain Katie McCabe will link up with the squad in Turkey after Arsenal's Champions League final this weekend, while Heather Payne, Tara O'Hanlon, Jamie Finn, Lily Agg and Jess Sue all miss out with injuries.
Yeah, indeed. Big comeback for Louise Quinn to the squad. You've got more here on Tyler Toland.
She's been included in the squad. Her club, Blackburn Rovers, have been relegated and withdrawn from the Women's Championship for next season. The club's owners decided against meeting the league's funding criteria, meaning they failed to meet licence requirements and keep their second-tier status before yesterday's deadlines. Not good news there.
No, and we do have the squads for tomorrow's Europa League final.
Yeah, and Manchester United have included Joshua Zirkzee, Lenny Yaro and Diogo Dalot in that squad. Zirkzee returned to training today, having previously been ruled out for the rest of the season by manager Ruben Amorim, while defenders Yaro and Dalot have also apparently recovered from respective knocks and took part in training today. Tottenham captain Heung-min Son insists he's fully fit for tomorrow night's Europa League final. Now, manager Ange Postecoglou, as we've alluded to, took exception to a piece by London Evening Standard writer Dan Kilpatrick. The article, titled Ange Postecoglou Teetering Between Hero and Clown with Tottenham Legacy on the Line in Europa League final, assesses what the legacy of this season will be for Spurs depending on tomorrow night's results. It led to a robust retort from Postecoglou at today's press conference.
If you win tomorrow night, this is going to be remembered as one of the best seasons in the club's modern history. But kind of conversely, if you lose, it might be remembered for one of the worst league seasons in the club's modern history. I just wondered if you're kind of conscious that you're walking a fine line between kind of two very different types of infamy in history, really.
That depends on your outlook, Dan, but I'll tell you one thing, irrespective of tomorrow, I'm not a clown. I never will be, mate, and you're really disappointed that you would use such terminology about a person who, for 26 years, without any favours from anyone, has worked his way to be in a position where he's leading out a club in a European major competition. For you to suggest that somehow us not being successful means that I'm a clown, not really sure how to answer that question.
I think I might.
The big part about that is just disappointed in you, Dan. I mean,
yeah,
that hurts for most people, but getting that from Ange is a tough one.
Off the ball football show regular, Dan Kilpatrick.
That's it. 0879 180 180 is our number. You're having a laugh, Mick. Celtic would beat the pick of Spurs and United, says one texter, which is a fair point.
Oh, absolutely. This season.
Someone else, Brendan Mack, to put a name to the text, says, tomorrow night is a competition to decide who to bestow clownship on. Arise, Sir Clown. Also, Ange proves anyone, including clowns, could manage Celtic to the Scottish title. Brendan Mack.
No comment.
Yes.
Is that Brendan Rodge? No, sorry.
I hadn't read to the end of that text before reading it out, Brendan Mack. You got me there. And also, oh please, Pep only wins with a massive advantage. If Ange is a clown, what is Ruben or Pep this season?
Pep, in terms of his clown credentials, I was looking forward to the press conference after the FA Cup final so much, and it delivered on every front, because every time Pep loses, it's kind of clown behaviour where it's just comedy gold.
Pep is a clown.
Yeah,
but it's not to completely dismiss him as only a clown. But he is a clown. His press conference displays and his like over the top dramatics and all that, it's all clown behaviour. Like, that's what a clown is.
It's not.
He's not only a clown. He's also probably the best football manager of all time. Do you know what I mean? It's not to just dismiss him as only a clown, as but a clown.
I don't.
That stuff with Henderson was clownish, wasn't it? Come on.
No, it's just a bad loser.
Yeah.
Just a bad loser. Like, I've seen some clowns who are great losers. Like, I mean, that's not.
Yeah, but it's not. The characteristics of a clown aren't one-dimensional.
No, well, absolutely.
Well, maybe they are, actually.
He's not a clown first.
I haven't really been to a circus in quite a while.
Thankfully, we've got a good collection of non-clowns lined up this Thursday, because we're wrapping up the football season with Richard Dunn, Glenn Whelan, and another special guest yet to be announced. So, Thursday, 22nd of May, 2 days' time. It's the Goat Bar in Dublin. For information on how to get tickets, you can check out the Off the Ball socials. It's all with thanks to Guinness. Never settle. Where do you want to go next, Cameron?
Well, Bohemians have confirmed they will play at least part of next season at Dalymount Park. This season was scheduled to be their last at the Phibsborough ground, with redevelopment expected to leave it out of action. But the club's president, Matt Devaney, today admitted that the works are progressing slower than expected. We always had the belief that we'd want to go at the end of the season, but now, just to get it done, if it happens earlier mid-season, we can try and get that done, he said today. Devaney also floated the possibility of using the RDS as a venue for bigger fixtures.
Yeah, really interesting publication from Bohemians today as well with regards to the social impact of the club and actually putting a figure on that. We're going to have Daniel Lambert here in the studio tomorrow evening on the football show to discuss. We have time for a couple of more stories, Cameron.
Crystal Palace captain Mark Gay unavailable for tonight's Premier League clash with Wolves. The centre-back needed hospital treatment following a facial injury in Saturday's FA Cup final victory against Manchester City. On City, they're looking to keep their top 5 quest alive at home to Bournemouth. Both of those games kicking off at 8 o'clock.
And we have some tennis and rugby.
Yeah, the USTA has announced plans to invest over €700 million into the venue for the US Open. The entirely self-funded project includes a top-to-bottom modernisation of the Arthur Ashe Stadium and a new player performance centre. Construction will take place in phases so as to avoid any interruption in this year's or next year's US Open tournaments. And Matt Sherratt will lead Wales as interim head coach for July's 2-test tour of Japan. You'll remember the Cardiff boss also stepped in for the final 3 Six Nations matches earlier this year after Warren Gatland stood down midway through the championship. He'll be assisted by Harlequins player Danny Wilson and Adam Jones, along with Gloucester's T.R. Thomas and former Wales prop Gethin Jenkins.
All right, Cameron, thank you for that. Mick, thank you. We're going to take a quick break and chat to Colin Boyle about Mayo Cavan and also about Galway Dublin in just a moment. But before that, it's time for the Cash Machine.
News Talk's Cash Machine.
Now, there's another huge amount to be won in the Cash Machine this Friday, and the number you need to know is €177,000 exactly. Text PLAY, PLAY, to 57557. That's 57557. Get your entry in by 3 p.m. next Friday. Then across the Go Loud network of stations, someone will get that call. If your phone rings, answer it within 5 rings. Give us the exact amount in euro and cent, and you will win the cash. So remember that amount one more time. €177,000 exactly. Over 18s only. Text costs €2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations, and terms, conditions are on News Talk.